everyone, to another episode of Tectonic Lounge. Today, our guest on the show is Kathryn Saynes. Say hi, Katie.
Hello.
So, Katie is a vice president of academics at Bryan College in a beautiful Dayton, Tennessee, a school that we both had the privilege of attending, some of us further back than others. We won't reveal graduation years or anything like that for the sake of posterity, not necessary. So, Katie, welcome to the show. What is kind of your overall connection to education and technology before we get too deep into all this?
Oh, wow. Okay. So I was previously a middle school math teacher. So technology integration, at that point, we were moving away from, I'm going to date myself, but we were moving away from overhead projectors. We were starting to integrate more technology into the classroom. So I've just seen kind of the progression of technology and trying to integrate that into the classroom to now where I'm trying to prepare faculty for using AI or how to run different modules in their classroom or completely teaching online like we did, everything shut down during COVID. So that's kind of my background, watching how this has gone for the last 20 plus years.
And would you say the pace of change has accelerated just a bit in the last few years?
Oh my goodness. Yes. I always joked when I was teaching in the classroom. So my other job was to teach future teachers. So I taught in the education department for 15 years. And I used to joke with my students that the amount of technology that we had available to us just from when I graduated from college until any given point when I was teaching, the growth was exponential.
Yeah, it is fascinating. Again, we're trying not to date ourselves, but we're doing it anyway. I remember when they first launched the 21st century classroom demo. So this was
Right?
still the last century, and everybody was so fascinated by this. I think that thing was out of date by the time you got to Bryan. I remember even helping set it up back in the 90s. So it's definitely been a change. I was recently laughing hard with a high school kid today because he had a ringtone set up as the old modem sound from the 90s. He goes, I don't know what it is, but it's so cool. I'm like, no, it's a very painful memory.
It is
It's just
the
those,
waiting.
yeah, I had to wait on dial up. And I still remember the days where if you were in the dorm and you had to use the dorm phone, this is before internet was all over campus, and somebody picked up the phone in your dorm. It's like that was just you had to wanted to scream at people at that moment, but a lot has changed. Okay, so we're going to jump into a couple different topics, but really you're living in the world of higher education, and obviously you have students who are internet native and have never made it through class without power of Google. We'll save all the AI stuff for a little bit later because that's a nice little sensitive time bomb of a topic anyway. But I kind of want to understand the perspective of, obviously most of your faculty members remember the time before Google and library catalogs were still a factor and all the other stuff. How do you help them bridge that gap between the generations of non-native and native technology people?
Yeah, so that's a great question and one that's a little hard to answer because so many of our faculty are at so many different levels. And quite honestly, it doesn't have anything to do with age because I think when we think about technology use in higher ed, we tend to think that like our older professors may not be as tech savvy or they may be sort of stuck in their ways. But I have seen just as many younger professors who are new to the university system coming in, being a little jaded about using technology and enjoying the old methods, right, that they experience with their professors. I think what we have found to be most useful is really just meeting our professors where they are. One of my encouragements this year was to pick an area of technology that you are unfamiliar with and just try to improve. And I even said it can be anything from learning how to use your Google Calendar to integrating AI into your classroom. So that's a wide span of things. I think realistic expectations for faculty and understanding that sometimes these shifts are, for lack of a better word, they're tectonic. I mean, they're huge. When we think about moving, even I'll use an example, our online programs, all of our textbooks are integrated into our online courses. And so no longer does anyone have to go out and buy the hard copy or, take notes that way. Everything's already there. And we're looking at even doing that with our residential students because we find if it's available and ready when they start class, they're more likely to use it. So helping them see kind of the student perspective of it too, like how does this help our students be more successful? I found with our professors that maybe have been a little more hesitant to integrate technology, showing them the student success stories. They want their students to be successful. And so if this tool that I'm giving you will help them, then they're more likely to integrate it that way too.
All right. Well, you said something that was a question I was going to bring up later, but it's a perfect time for it. You mentioned taking notes. And I know this is not a simple yes or no answer by any means, because I'm reading things about how handwriting our notes or being able to shorthand does connect things neurally within our brain, right? Neurology matters versus typing notes, or as I'm seeing today, voice recording and letting an AI thing summarize the notes for you. Do you see an impact that perhaps sometimes we long for the good old days, but we actually see detrimental things in the tools the students are using? Again, I'm not talking about AI. We'll have a completely separate conversation. But as far as something as simple as note taking, not taking notes in person, has that been an impact, or are there other examples you think of where we're assuming it's not good, or maybe we're assuming it is good and it isn't?
That's a hard one. So I'm an avid note taker, even in meetings. My note taking looks different now. I have my iPad, I take electronic notes, and everything's stored in a nice electronic notebook, which is amazing. I've seen more of my students leaning towards that, the ones that are more tactile learners. However, what I have found is what you were mentioning, even recording. So we record all of our courses now, and they're immediately available for our students to watch at any point. And they're being able to take those recordings, plug them in, and have AI generate notes. Our students who struggle with, say, ADHD or just struggle with knowing what notes to take, this tool has been extremely helpful for them. So the true blue teacher in me wants to say no, active pen, active mind. But then I see my students who struggled for so long trying to engage in that way when their mind would not, it wouldn't shift from the lecture to taking notes, and now they're being successful. So I think there's something to be said about the old way, that there's science behind it, that there is a connection between our brain and that tactile learning. However, for our students whose brains are not wired that way, we now have a way for them to be successful as well.
Yeah, and I've always been a note taker. I was blessed even back in middle school to have a teacher take the time to teach us to shorthand. And I think that was a very powerful thing. But what I remember longing for, particularly in college when I was doing some work for my master's stuff in San Francisco, is I wish I could search them, because I had notebooks of notes like, oh yeah, somewhere 3 years ago, I wrote something down that would really be helpful, but I wish I could search for it, which of course is very doable now. And as several people who know me would complain, my handwriting is not very readable either. So that creates this whole other issue. Okay, so often a lot of people who watch our podcast, webcast, are business-minded folks. Before we go into some of the more specific things in the education space, do you feel that the demands that the employers have on the graduates, because you're dealing with, obviously, hey, you're preparing people for real world, degrees should help get a job. Whether or not that's always the case, that's a whole other philosophical conversation. But do you feel the demands have changed on what's expected people to know, both from the skill set side or knowledge base side, when it comes to technology in the workplace?
I think there is a higher demand that students graduate with at least some foundational skills. I feel like a lot of training, though, is on the job. You have to get into whatever position or company that you're going to work with and learn their particular system. It's really similar in higher ed. What learning management system do you use? Because that's completely different sets of training based on, what you're going to use. But I think there is a need for foundational skills. And you actually mentioned earlier, I meant to hit on this, that our students are digital natives. They are, but it is astounding how many of them do not know how to save a file or print to a printer or upload a file into our learning management system. So we have actually created a course where at the beginning of the school year, we walk them through just some college success tools, things that are very basic. I think they're digital natives and they know how to work their phones and they know how to access information and they know how to use apps. But some of those foundational skills that I think employers are looking for tend to be what they're lacking and what we're trying to give them while they're here too.
Yeah, I've noticed you're absolutely right. Even like with us, when we do project management tools, somebody comes in, speaking geek here, from a Jira environment, they have to relearn and use, because we use ClickUp, which is a major Jira competitor. So yeah, but again, having the basic skills of, you at least know how to put a file where it needs to go, or whatever it may be. But what about going beyond the actual like point and click skills? Has the technology, like I'm going to guess here, and you're welcome to tell me I'm completely wrong. I would guess that a lot of people say, no, you need to be able to know how to organize information better. You need to be able to know how to research things better and analyze what you're getting as opposed to just regurgitating, what Google gave you, because how do you know if it's been accurate? What of those soft skills that are technologically overlaced, I would say, have you seen needed?
Yeah, so we actually do a lot of that. So you are right. We are constantly trying to teach our students how to analyze their sources and determine, is this a reliable source? Is this someone trying to push an agenda? What are the biases that are present? And how to leverage Google, but how to go beyond just Google? How to use our research databases. We just subscribed to a new database that will allow our marketing students to actually work with real data that has been gathered and used in marketing across the country, actually across the globe. So they're able to use this data to kind of mine through and decide, okay, if we wanted to market this particular product, we would want to do it in this particular state and in this particular area of that state, because this is where, those people are. So there are those soft skills that we want to teach them, being able to analyze their sources and to determine if they're reputable and if they are sources that they would, kind of stake a claim on. And I think that's going to help them as it translates into whatever job they're moving into, because they're going to be able to, again, look at what's presented to them and decide, what pieces of that they want to pull out and which ones they would want to present to colleagues or, as a business model or what they would be willing to, tie their name to.
Okay, well, we keep dancing around this, and I think this topic itself begs to dive into this lovely topic of AI. By the way, for anybody listening, we have a couple episodes where we touched on AI. I mentioned it to Katie on a previous call. We had our longest call ever, our longest recording ever is with Andrew, who's a researcher at St. Andrews University in Scotland, focusing and teaching people on AI, but he actually broke down a lot of the myths of AI and helped us deconstruct a lot of the big words. What do they really mean? And simplify it and demystify it in many ways. So we're going to talk specifically how AI is impacting higher education. And I have no doubt the impact has felt in many ways. Let me start with the topic we were just talking about, which is research and analysis of content. Andrew talked about this, several other sources. The amount of volume of content being produced by generative AI is skyrocketing. Some of the estimates show that the entire collection of Western literature will be tripled by the end of 2030 at the current pace of AI content production. Not all of that is accurate. Not all of it is quality. How does an academic institution ensure that the materials being analyzed and used in further research and even probably basis for research are quality, are valuable, are useful, and not just, something AI regurgitated?
Oh, man. So this is
Did
a
I open a
tricky
can of
topic for
worms?
us. Do what?
Did I open a can of worms?
You did. I can't put the lid back on it though.
All right.
And quite honestly, I mean, that's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to put the lid back on it. We're just trying to figure out what to do with what came out. I think that's where those higher order thinking skills. So being an educator, those of you that are, you'll understand Bloom's taxonomy, where we're really trying to work in that synthesis and evaluation and the analyzing sections. So that's those three main higher order thinking skills. And when we're reading through research, when we're trying to sift through and decide what supports our research, that is an important part of it, being able to analyze our sources, being able to look at it too. What we've had some of our students do in various classes is generate something using AI, but then go back and dig into those sources. Which ones are accurate? Which ones are accurately portrayed? Because we can pull things out of context and use them to support us when that's not really what the author intended, right? So I think part of it is teaching students to be critical thinkers and to realize that AI is a machine. It can pull information and it can make something sound really, really good and thoughtful, but we have to actually do the work to dig in and see what is useful and what's been used in context, and honestly, what's truth. That is a big thing here at Bryan, like what is truth? So helping them to really wrestle with, okay, this was generated and the quote is right, but how it's used is not correct. So that's kind of one way we're teaching them to wrestle with content that has been generated with AI. Now, using AI to generate content is a whole different topic.
That's a whole other topic. Yeah, we'll get into that. I'm struggling with it a little bit just because of the research that I do for my work and other things. I have found quotes that have been misattributed because somebody using generative AI has used the quote, didn't cite it, therefore they're being put in as author of a quote. That's a simple example. But what I'm also finding, I actually just recently stumbled on an article on a topic that I was researching for another episode, and somebody was representing something citing quotes from an AI source. And this is where you get to, well, if it's being recited by somebody else and they didn't do the due diligence, you're getting into several layers deep of, holy crap, this is a very uncomfortable analysis you have to go through, where how much do you trust the source? And again, multiplicity of sources, and you talk about high levels of thinking, higher degrees of knowledge. I think all that is very important, but I don't think it's an easy solution. I think there's a lot of work still.
Yeah, I do too. And I think this is where we also can teach our students AI is helpful, but sometimes it's almost more work to have AI generate something for you and then to go back and to make sure all of those things were attributed to the right people and used in the correct context rather than just producing your own work. And we can get into that a little bit more later, but how do they use AI in a way that is productive and meaningful and still engages their brain, and recognizing, again, it seems like an easy shortcut, but really it could end up being more work than just sitting down and doing the work yourself.
Yes, the one thing I will say, the several episodes where AI has come up, every single guest we had said AI is a great tool to give you a first draft. If you're a writer, we've all had to deal with writer's block. AI can help you overcome writer's block. It gives you something that you can start editing and hopefully get inspired. AI is a great starting point for your digital design stuff, or for imagery, or in video, or whatever. But it should never be the final product. There should be human layer, human oversight. AI, as smart as it is still incapable of fully understanding a full range of human emotion. I think
Yeah.
that's the limitation. We had a guest who's a real estate specialist. He said, we tried to teach AI the idea that people will just not pay rent and, stay in the house and not want to leave. And AI didn't get it. I'm like, well, that's true. Humans sometimes don't make sense. That's perfectly fine. Okay. So I'm going to throw out a bigger concept at you. I've read a couple of articles saying that we're facing a complete change on what they were talking about, higher degrees like masters and doctors, because in the article, the author said a master's degree is research and writing, which are now basically can be done in AI, and you can replicate a master's experience from the 1980s in 30 minutes of AI work. I don't know to what level you can replicate the entire undergraduate experience. We won't talk about the intrinsic and emotional values and the relationships built. But from the academic perspective, for the next 3 to 4 years, let's say, let's talk about freshmen who just showed up for their lifetime in the college. What do you see is going to be the changes that are going to happen in the overall education process that are impacted by technology? Not just the use of tools, but how is their experience going to be so different because technology exists?
Man, I feel like in the next 4 years, so much could potentially change. Talking about AI as we embrace AI and we continue to learn how to use it more and how to teach our students to use it ethically. I think that's going to be a big emphasis. I think as we continue to use more electronic resources, so textbooks, courseware, interactive modules, I think of the movie Big. Now I really have dated myself, where, it was just this insane idea that we would have a book where you can pick your own adventure. But now we have courseware. Our business students are opening up a coffee shop, and then each week they go in and they make choices. And then based on those choices, the next week their revenue may go up or down, or their business may go up or down. And then they have to make new choices. So those sorts of resources, and then I say hands-on. It is hands-on, but in an electronic format. They're getting to experience what could potentially happen in the real world. So I think some of those experiences will just continue to be enhanced and become more and more realistic. So I'm a little intimidated, but then also excited to see like what our students could experience before we turn them loose at the undergraduate level, into the big bad world to face whatever they're going to do with their life.
I like the big bad world. That's great. Um, living here in the big bad world, right? Here's, I guess, flowing out of that. Are we going to get to a point where the student doesn't even need to go to a university or a college and will go to an online only solution where they can, as you said, pick their own adventure, mix their classes, have an online advisor, never have to go and again, they'll miss out on things that most of us love from the college experience. whether it was on a sports field or whether it was in the dorm room. But is the concept of higher education changing because of this? And is that going to change quickly? Is it a good thing? Kind of giving you room to go in any direction you want to with that one.
I don't see the typical face to face college experience ever really going away, at least not in the foreseeable future. I think there are enough students that want the relational aspects of college and they want that experience. Now, are we going to see more online options open for those students? Yes. That has just exploded within the last, I would say, 5 to 7 years. We've had online education, but this mix of I want the residential experience, but I want the ability to take some online classes so that I don't know, it frees up their schedule some so they can be athletes and they can do online classes at their own, their own pace on their own schedule. And it kind of frees them up to be able to do the academic, but then do the athletic. Do I think we'll see more students move online? I think post pandemic, yes. They got a taste of what that could be like. And I think some students thrived in that environment and they were, either able to accelerate their education or decelerate their education. They were able to kind of customize it to fit what they needed. So I can see more of our typical undergraduate students going that route. But I think in the foreseeable future, I don't see the typical experience going away because of that relational piece. I know what we try to do, even in our online space, though, is still embed that relational piece where we're interacting with them on a weekly basis as instructors. We're posting announcements. We're telling stories about what happened to us this week in our announcements and then kind of tying the content from that week back into it. So I think even in the online space, there's room for that piece as well. But I do think technology is going to just continue to change the face of education, and we have to get ready and get on board.
So, going to make a hypothetical argument here. If I can take physics class from Neil deGrasse Tyson or from some professor at MIT, and I can take an amazing English class from, I'm trying to think of University of Chicago, I think had a great English program or whatever, and I can mix and match while still getting a few classes on my local campus. Is that an experience that's worth pursuing, like where you can actually start picking and choosing? Or is that what you think is going to happen for more advanced degrees when you're trying to really become a master of your craft? Or instead of getting a PhD at one school, you're going to start working with people from all around the world and, getting somebody from Germany, Australia, India involved?
Yeah, I think initially that's going to start being seen more in the graduate level. So in the master's and doctoral level. Politically speaking, it's going to be difficult for a student to do that at the undergraduate level with like financial aid and that sort of thing. The restrictions that are placed on students, I think will hinder that, even if they want to. Now, we're seeing more opportunities, even as we as an institution have partnered with other organizations. We're seeing more opportunities for students to go to other places and kind of get that one-off class where this expert in this field is teaching this class, but I don't see it being kind of part of their holistic education, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm thinking back. I'm a history buff, and I look back at some of the early universities in Germany and Italy where you had essentially a mentor that you worked under, and then you traveled. I remember reading people travel from Frankfurt down to Verona and took classes there for a year, and then came back to Frankfurt and shared their knowledge with the students there. So it was a lot more smaller circle of education. And purely as a business guy, I also think about the fact that what I want to be able to do is produce people who can do the work that I cannot do through AI and I cannot do through systems. I want them to use those to take some of the routine stuff, right? I don't want somebody to copy and paste and send out 200 emails manually, which we used to do back in the 90s and the early aughts. Then hopefully there's automated systems for that, and AI will make them smarter and personalize them and include personal stories and all these other things. But I want to be able to have humans that are relational, and hopefully that's the skills that are going to come out of college.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of pieces to that. Even just the leadership building that happens in an undergraduate setting. Yes, you have to learn how to get along with your roommate or get along with maybe a professor that doesn't have the teaching style fits what you would really like to have, right? But I think there's leadership skills both on the field, and in various organizations that are really beneficial when you do graduate and go on to whether it's an advanced degree or into a profession.
Yeah, I remember having to play chess with a professor to improve my grade. Anyway, so let's go to one more can of worms. authenticity, right? We talk about what is truth. You mentioned that's a big core value that you guys emphasize. At what point does the work generated for the student by AI a problem? Obviously we can get into plagiarism if you want to. We can get into where's that line, right? And is test taking still the right thing? Is writing papers is still worth it? Are we actually seeing that, you can coast through college and let AI do most of your work? Are you actually going to gain the knowledge out of it? And yes, of course, ideally, everybody should emphasize the effort to gain knowledge. But there were classes I just wanted to get through back in the day and don't have much recollection of what I learned in those. Won't state which classes. But where's that line between authenticity, integrity, and using the tools to make things easier to get through school?
So we have wrestled with this quite a bit over the last, I don't know, year or two, as AI has become more and more popular and accessible. And it's an everyday presence now, right? So one model that we are trying this year is sort of a stair step approach. So we know that those 100 and 200 level classes contain some foundational skills. I almost equate AI to using the calculator to some extent, right? Why do by hand what you could put into a calculator and ensure you get the right answer, right? We have to teach students those foundational skills as to why something works. And this goes again back to my math teacher. I need you to understand why or how or what, and then by all means use the tool in an ethical manner. But I also need to teach you how to use the tool in an ethical manner. So in our 100, 200 level, it's very strict as far as like in our English classes, there should be very little AI generated content. We want to know what you can write, what you can produce on your own. Because then what we can do is we can grow you from that writer into someone who puts information into AI, gets an outline, and then you go from there because you had writer's block, right? But you still have the ability, if AI for whatever reason just disappeared one day, you would still be able to proficiently communicate in writing. From there, as we move into like 200 and 300 level, the integration begins to vary a little more. Like I said, with our, like our business students are using it to create business models and then even evaluating those business models. Our history classes, they're actually having AI generate a paper and then they're comparing it to what they've read in their text and then some of the other readings that they've had, just to see, this is what these people have said who experienced it, but this is what AI generated for us. And then as we move into the 400 level courses, again, really focusing on ethical use of AI. And, we all know that AI can make our job easier. And we do know that there are those courses. I even had them that we just want to survive and get through and move on to the thing that we enjoy, right? But I think that's where also that relational piece comes into play. And that's where AI won't work for us. But having the professor really dig in and explain, why is this important for you to understand? Whatever this, I won't name classes either, but whatever this content is that you're not interested in, how is this going to make you a more well-rounded person, right? And sometimes that really is just it. It just makes you a more well-rounded person, but it does make you think more critically because you're probably spending a little more time focusing on maybe this topic that you don't understand, whereas in these other classes that you enjoy, maybe that comes a little easier. So I think kind of this tailored sort of stair-step approach, I think we're only, it's September. We're 2 months in. So we're dealing with some plagiarism issues in some of our lower level freshman classes where they do want to just throw their prompt in from their English teacher and AI spits out a paper. So we are making them go back and redo those papers. Now, as they move into 300 and 400 level, we expect to see more AI generation. However, we also expect to see a little more critical thinking, actually a lot more critical thinking, and being able to pick out those parts that aren't accurate or really aren't good pieces of research and then replacing them. So this becomes your own piece of work, not something that's solely generated by AI.
So it goes into collaboration mode more than anything else. It goes into where it's part of the process. It's not the end product, as we mentioned earlier. I had a professor who I studied under in California tell me that when the student turns in the paper, he runs the 3 AI test, and if AI does it, he has AI graded for them. And if he puts graded by AI, and one of the students complained and said, why didn't you take the time to grade my paper? He said, because you didn't take the time to write it. So I think that's only fair because AI is good at it. You give it a rubric and you tell them to analyze something. AI is really good at that. That's actually the strength of an AI system. It removes emotions out of it. And in fact, when I talked to him, I suggested something that he emailed me 2 weeks ago, is that he's actually going to start using. He's going to run all of his students' papers through AI to remove some of his biases, because we know that sometimes professors have favorites. And he goes, oh, wait, this gave it an A, I gave the student a C. Am I off somewhere, or vice versa? Perhaps there's something to be said for letting it check your own tendencies, biases, whatever you want to call them. You mentioned several times ethical use of AI. Is there like a statement you guys have, or a sentence that you tell them how to even say, is this ethical or not? Is there a test they can apply as students and as faculty to say, is this use of AI ethical or not?
So I feel like that's something we're still trying to work out as well. We have this nice long, honesty policy or honor code, and AI is specifically mentioned in there. And a lot of it points back to, again, that relational piece, like communicating with your professor what their expectation is. What is the level of AI generation that this professor finds acceptable? Now, that then shifts some. So professors need to be more intentional in their prompts or their assignments, explaining what they expect from students. And to use, our English department as a good example, they've been very explicit in their instructions as to those foundational courses. No AI generation whatsoever here. Up here, you can use it for outlining purposes or finding potential sources or analyzing for themes, things like that. But I think we probably should create some sort of, almost like you said, a test where a student can say, okay, I've done this. Is that ethical? But I think we have to be honest with ourselves too. What do we use AI for as administrators and professors? And then that should also help us determine kind of a litmus test as to what our students should be doing. And I know the argument is going to be, well, I already have all my degrees and I have plenty of them. But if it's okay for me to use AI to generate a rubric, why is that not okay for a student to do?
Right. By the
Right?
time they hit the workforce, right, they're going to be needing to use AI, and the boss is not going to tell them don't use AI as long as you deliver the quality of work needed.
Right.
But I will tell you this, because I work with a lot of non-native English speakers and we communicate with customers. We had to have a big sit down with a few of them and say, hey, don't just send out an email that an AI generated. Humans will read it and say, this was not written by a human, and you're going to lose an emotional relationship with your customer. That
Right.
That's a
Right.
real life, if you want to give it to a student example, hey, AI is great, but when you try to send an AI email to a customer, you may lose a customer.
So that's actually interesting. We're wrestling with that right now because we have a decent sized population who are non English speaking students. And so they will write their papers or assignments in their native language and then translate it. Well, then if you run that through an AI generator, it flags it as being generated by AI. So the educator in me is wrestling with, okay, it's a tool, but then that tool also makes the writing better. So we've got to figure out, what is a tool and what is this taking it to a level where you're not actually, these aren't your actual words. AI has taken the words that you use, but it's made it sound more professional or more educated. So that just adds a whole different layer of complication to things.
Yeah, and there's a difference between a translator and an interpreter, right? Because that's a
Yes.
whole other thing. I've used translators for some of the classes I teach, because I have some materials like for my business classes that come from MIT that I just didn't want to take the time to translate the whole document, but I don't want to be interpreted. I'll go through and I fix, because I am applying my experience and my knowledge to fix them. But yeah, that's a good one. So with teachers having to deal with this, do you feel like they're on the defensive, or are some of the professors coming forward, students, hey, here's some cool AI things you can do for your projects. Here's some cool AI things you can do for your research. Are they actually telling students, hopefully not every professor out there is just saying, AI is the enemy, I have to fight against it, especially in my 101 class. Are there things that the teachers are doing to help the student with AI?
There are. I think the initial knee jerk reaction when we just started hearing about AI and what was going to come from it and how, like you said, I mean, if we could go off on a strange rabbit trail, no one's going to be able to write. Only machines will be able to write for us and communicate. But as we have really, I think, put AI in front of our professors more and shown them ways that they can use it, and then even how to train their students to use it, I think that has calmed some of the fears. Now, are there professors out there, and I'm speaking not just for our institution, but just across all of them? There are going to be professors that it doesn't matter what level course, it doesn't matter what we're doing, AI is a no-no. But I am seeing more and more of them engage with it. And then after engaging with it, and I think, again, knowledge is power. So after I understand something and I know how I could use it and how helpful it's been to me, and I know some of the pitfalls, I can then take that into the classroom, right? So now I understand it more. I'm not as afraid of it. And now I can engage students with that material. So I think that's just a natural process. I mean, when we introduced iPads and we introduced smart boards and all of these other things, there was trepidation and fear in using those too. But then as our knowledge continued to grow, we engaged and we pulled students in and we taught them how to use it effectively. So I think it's just a process like anything else. But I think because we have seen technology grow so rapidly, I think this may be a little bit harder for professors to switch gears.
You know, I was still in high school when there was a big debate going on when I think it was Microsoft Word that released the first grammar check, whether that was
Yes.
considered cheating or not, because it was fixing your mistakes and you weren't necessarily learning from that. People got over that one real fast. So I think
Yeah.
it's fascinating. One of the pieces of advice that I'll pass on to our listeners, and maybe some of it will apply to some of your professors and students, is remind folks that it's not magic. AI is not magic. There is a black box or white box, but there has been a training and a learning, and depending on what type of AI it is, that is basing it on something else. And that's why it has its biases. That's why it has all this stuff. But I also will say from Andrew's episode, we're in the transitory system right now with AI, where we will settle to our regular use, where we basically just get used to AI doing things for us and it becomes part of life. We're not there yet. And it's going to continue evolving. I'm particularly asking myself a question. I'll throw it to you. Are we first going to see students using AI video to pretend to be in an online class, or are we going to see teachers being replaced by AI and teachers sitting at home, sipping his coffee while the AI avatar actually does the video lecture? I'm not sure which one's going to happen first. Any thoughts?
I'm hoping the last one that you mentioned, the teacher sitting and letting the avatar teach the class. I hope that happens last, like way down the road after I'm gone. I doubt that seriously. I think it will happen, but there again, I think that's where the relational side of humanity is going to come into play. That might seem, I think, engaging for some and they will enjoy it, but I think others will want that personal interaction and crave that relational piece of learning that happens when you do collaborate with groups and you find that favorite professor who teaches you more than just what was in the books in their classroom. So will we get there? Yes, I am 100% sure we'll get there. Who thought that we would be doing 100% asynchronous classes? If you had asked us that 20 years ago, we would have said, ooh, no one can learn that way. So yes, we'll get there. Do I think everyone will jump ship to that model? No.
Probably not. And again, I
Yeah.
think it depends on levels of courses, right? If you're doing
Yeah.
psychology 101 and you're at Ohio State University with 14,000 people in the classroom and you're doing it online, I don't think there's going to be much of a difference felt. I don't know if you saw that, but September 5th, there was a full TED Talk done by an avatar without anybody noticing the difference. So I think we're closer than we would guess on that. The video technology is getting pretty scary. It's getting the
Yeah.
shadows right now, which is the line that a lot of experts didn't think it would cross. But I do think, and I've actually heard stories from teachers that they didn't think it was a student themselves, that they either did a video on a loop, and some of them are starting to use AI video generators to put themselves in the room and do reactions based on teachers' content. So I think we're getting there soon. The battle of the minds may continue. So we're wrapping up, and I know we can probably keep talking about this for another month. And I guarantee you, some faculty member that works for you will listen to this and say, "Wait a minute, I don't remember agreeing to this, so I don't want to get you into too much trouble." As a final thought, what is kind of the thing that you're encouraged by the most that you can expect for this school year with the technology use in the classroom, with technology use in education overall, that you're just excited about and something you're looking forward to that we haven't covered yet?
Man, you ask a hard question. So, the thing I'm excited most about is probably just seeing, and this is the educator in me, I am really excited to see how everybody grows over the course of this year because part of our push in our Center for Teaching Excellence is we've kind of got a 3-tiered approach, but one of those tiers is technology and really pushing technology integration, but then also leaning into AI instead of leaning away from it. So I don't know that there's like a particular piece or an outcome, but just the growth that I hope to see and the willingness to explore. I think if I even see growth in just being willing to explore technology, advancing it, even stepping outside of our comfort zones and maybe using AI once in a while, I think that will be positive growth and then just a good foundation for us to build off of. So I'm kind of excited to see where we are at the end of the year after we go back and we measure our goals that we set.
I think that's a great answer. I think that's a wonderful answer to say, let's not be afraid. Let's go there with eyes open and be prepared for turbulence along the flight. But let's get on that plane. Let's ride along. Let's not pretend like it's not going to happen, whether we embrace it or not. All right. So every guest, I ask you the same thing at the very end: is there any kind of final message that you want to encourage people, or just something that is positive that you want to share, whether it's something applying to education, technology, or even one of our guests shared something that he wishes his kids would look forward to when they get older and having to deal with what he's dealing now and stuff like that. The floor is yours, kind of, for the final message.
Let's see. I think from an education standpoint, if I could leave you with some words, I think it would be to embrace change. I have seen so much change in my time as a student to, from Oregon Trail to AI. That's where we've come. So if that can happen in the span of my lifetime, I can guarantee there's going to be more change. So if we can be open to change, it doesn't mean that we have to always fully embrace it, but I think being open to it and the possibilities makes us better educators and better thinkers. And it helps us to kind of guide the next generation as well. So if we can set that example of open to change and not being fearful, rather embracing it, then I think we can help them as they walk into the next few decades of change.
That's a great point. I don't think I can do it any better. So thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Katie, for being our guest today. I encourage everybody to keep tuning in. We have some exciting guests lined up from all over the world. We have a few more international guests coming on, not just from the US. So please enjoy this episode of Tectonic Lounge, hopefully not at 1.5 speed, so we sound normal. And come back and listen to more others. Thank you again, everybody, and thank you, Katie, for being here.
Thank you.